Hello, everyone. Welcome back. Today we are talking about the Acolyte Episode 4. Um, trying to kind of gather my thoughts here. It's amazing because we brought everyone back to Coruscant at the Jedi Temple there, and we see the younglings going through what I think is supposed to be lightsaber training. Unfortunately, they're using Boken, so it would make sense if somebody had gone back through and maybe made it look like lightsabers, but then the way they handle it afterwards, they had no intention to. Um, now, I'm going to throw this out here because I think it's silly um, in so many ways. Because a lightsaber is going to have a different feel than a Boken, and I don't see a reason to train with a Boken when you could have a training lightsaber. Now, there are supposed to be two different types of lightsabers, three if you really want to go into the light foil, but that's a whole different thing. It's similar to a lightsaber, but not quite. Um, but they had a training lightsaber which wouldn't do damage but would stun you. So you knew when you messed up and you got hit because it would kind of stun that a little bit and it would kind of shock you a little. But it wouldn't do damage. And early lightsabers would have that ability to switch it from being a training lightsaber to an actual lethal lightsaber. So, as a Padawan, you could train with the same lightsaber you're going to use, but then when you're in actual harm's way, you could defend yourself. This way, you understand how to handle your lightsaber, and the fact that there may or may not, and this is all up for speculation. When George Lucas originally created the whole lightsaber idea, he wanted two hands on there to say there is a weight to this. And then when we got to the Clone Wars or to the prequels, he wanted it faster to say they were more used to handling the lightsabers and so on and so forth. So it was then used more one handed than it was two handed. Um, So, what weight is going to be there, or what won't be there, or how that actually operates is going to be different from a Boken. So, I don't see a real reason to have kids using Bokens when they could have been using a lightsaber. That's my take on it. Then we start getting to their council meeting and all that. Now, um, I kind of mentioned this to my wife, and you know, I don't want to sound like I'm against women because that's not true in any regard, but the lady that they have running the Jedi Order is kind of like a proof that women can't run anything, which is not true. But at least in the Star Wars universe, in in Headland's universe, women can't run anything. They're just fumbling. Jedi don't know how to do anything. That's the way it just seems to me. They are just so. The gentleman that plays Soul or whatever, he seems like the only one that has any idea of what's going on in the galaxy. Everybody else is lost. They're very emotional. Um, like everybody's stricken with grief for some reason. You know, um, completely non Jedi-ish. And there's the one gentleman that looks like he wants to be large and in charge under Saul. Um, it seems like he grew up with Osha and knows that she had gone through the path of being a Jedi and she walked away from it, but he treats her like she is a criminal. But it's implied that he grew up with her and then he knows her and they were friends. This is not how friends deal with people, or at least how normal friends deal with people. Because you know, if I'm dealing with a friend, I'd like to sit down and have some empathy and understanding of what happened. And I'm not always going to be sitting here accusing them of things. That's not a friend. That's an enemy. Um, so it just doesn't seem like it's really It's not written well. It's not doing well. Um, I don't know. Um, but we have, getting back to the council here, I mean, we have the lady that's in charge, but we have Jedi's that are taking their own lives because they're strapped with tons of guilt, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever. We haven't seen something that is so horrific that they would be filled with this much guilt. Um, and we're 4 episodes in, and from my understanding, this is only 8 episodes, so it's like they're taking a very long, slow road to really tell us what could have been done in an old traditional 30-minute episode. Um, we are going off on things that just does not seem quite right. Um, Not to me. I'll finish watching it because I want to see how this works out, and I'm telling you about it. I don't consider myself a very good kind of critique or person for critiquing a lot of this stuff. I write adventures, and maybe they're not even the best adventures in the world, but I try to keep it lighthearted and fun and all that stuff. But just watching how this is going, it just doesn't seem like it's being reported from others that George Lucas is right. They don't understand how Jedi are supposed to be. I don't know why these Jedi are so grief stricken that they're willing to try and take their own life, or you know, we have Carrie Ann Moss who dies of a knife to the chest, but it wasn't right in the heart. Um, it didn't look like it was in the heart to me. So I don't know. It's it's almost the opposite of when you look at someone and saying, "Boy, they have some really thick plot armor that they just can't seem to die." It's like we have Jedi that are being written off so poorly. Um, and really, it does lead people to be kind of correct in their assumption. They don't think she ever really watched Star Wars. She just knows of it. Like most people know of Star Wars, but not everybody watches it because it's just not their forte. They don't like the science fiction thing or whatever, and I get it. Um, in my own world, I've experienced plenty of people that have never watched Star Wars, and I think it's silly. But there again, I know I love all the science fiction. We get onto the planet that they're supposed to get to, um, and then you have May, who's being led by this other gentleman, this Asian gentleman, which he seems like he's doing a very good job at being a good character. Honestly, to me, I see him being the gentleman that is actually her Sith master, whatever. Um, and we're kind of done with all the witches, which is, I think they were focusing on the wrong things when they were kind of doing all this stuff. I think if they would have just left it in the past and said, "Hey, um, you mention them, but I don't think they really needed to spend any time on them." We had decent actors. I'll say that they were decent. I'm not blaming the actors on doing. It's the writing and how things are being directed. And as far as the directing goes, the characters seem to actually do better than what they did in the first 2 episodes. Um, they seemed more fluid. They seemed like they were doing good. Visual effects, it is very good. Um, the story wise, um, I'm happy to see that we do have other aliens in the background, but it just seems like we don't really know what to do with Jedi. Um, but now we have this Jedi Force looking the track May down. They get onto whatever discount Kashyyyk, and then they have some bugs on the trees, which is an interesting thing, and I don't mind that part. Um, I thought they were going to be into a bigger fight than what they were, so they kind of really scaled that back. I think it would have been a little bit more interesting. It's kind of long drawn out because typically, if you mess with a bug, and I'll say it in the regard of if you disturb a bee, the bee doesn't fly away and kind of look at you and then fly at you, it automatically flies at you because now it feels like it was attacked. Um, and that's what this bug does. I'm surprised that we don't have, because it kind of screeches and then it kind of comes off after OSHA, and then Soul kind of kills it. I'm surprised the other bugs didn't then pick up and start to attack. That would have made more sense. Seems like it was killed fairly easily, so it doesn't look like it would have been a major battle. It would have been a fairly quick battle, but there again, the writing here, I mean, you could have turned that, that would have been an interesting, okay, so now they ran into an ambush from tree bugs, right? Um, and now we have May, and this is spoiler stuff. She's going after the Wookiee Jedi, and I didn't know if they were playing the Wookiee off as male or female. I did notice the Wookiee's not wearing all the clothing, which didn't make any sense, and I'm thinking of it even more so of when you have this nice big hairy dog, you don't want to put a sweater on the dog because the dog's going to be sweating its butt off, and that's kind of what they were. It felt like when we first saw the Wookiee. You know, it's got all the robes on. It's like that Wookiee has got to be just sweating its butt off, not comfortable. We've never clothed Wookiees before because we've never needed to. And I know that George Lucas had gotten some crud over it. Of out of everything, they were worried that the Wookiees didn't have pants on, but we never needed it. So um, now we're trying to put clothes on Wookiees, and now we have the Wookiee without clothes. And it's there's no consistency in here. Um, Although the Wookiee did have a belt on, which, okay, that makes a little bit of sense to hold whatever, and it doesn't have the sash, it's got a belt. Okay, I could see that. Um, but now we have May, and she's talking about surrendering to the Wookiee Jedi, and she suddenly wants to maybe become good. Where if you're on a personal vendetta and you've killed off two Jedi already, and you're on to your third one, I don't understand why you would suddenly have this big change of heart and want to turn yourself in. This is bad writing. Someone that's that out for it. I mean, to take from other movie sense or novels or comic books or whatever. If you look at the Punisher, he lost his family, and he wants to punish those that went after his family because he's been in the military. He's done law enforcement. He wants justice. He wants street justice. He doesn't come down to saying, hey, the guy that was in charge of it, yeah, I've kind of offed enough people, I'm done. No, he goes all the way. It's all or nothing. He wants proper revenge. Yeah, she knows her sister is out there, but she seems undetermined as to what to make out of her sister, which I can see that. But if she's holding other people accountable for the death of her sister, and she's going down the dark path, because remember, it was always stated, once you go down the dark path, forever will it consume you. Much like Anakin. He went down the dark path to try and save Padme. He had the fear of losing Padme just like he lost his mother. And I thought we saw a very clear view out of the Clone Wars animated series where he would have doubts from the Jedi that would start making him see the Jedi as possibly evil because the war had kind of done things to some of the standard status quo. So it gave him a reason to doubt. And once you start doubting more. Like in a marriage or any other long-term relationship, if you can't have trust in that significant other, it starts wearing away at that relationship. That's why they always say, don't lie to your spouse, don't hide things from your spouse. Be open and say, hey, look, it's a surprise party. I don't want to ruin it, but if you have to know, I will tell you because I wanted it as a surprise. But and I've always lived that way myself. You know, my wife is a big part of my life. You know, to think of it in the same sense of what we learned from being a child. You know, lying bad, and I'm terrible at lying. Uh, but it's when you start going down these dark routes, you start seeing it more and more. People get more involved into this stuff, and we do see it in society today. Um, and that's really what this all is. It's a parable to try and keep us from going in those directions. Why she would suddenly have this change of heart, I don't know. But then she goes in to try and uh, turn herself over to the Wookiee Jedi, and the Wookiee Jedi is dead. Um, the gentleman that was with her had kind of disappeared a little bit, and then he was stuck in a tree, but nobody sees him stuck in a tree when they start coming through. So I'm thinking he is her master, kind of disguising himself so he can be close to her. He can see how she does things, and he can really see if she's really the apprentice that he wants her to be. Um, Now, the episode ends where whoever the Sith is supposed to be kind of comes in and has now approached up to Osha. I think, well, he ignited his red lightsaber and it just kind of ends there. Now he's got a goofy mask on, almost looks like someone wanted to make him look something like Venom to me, the way Venom's face is. But we'll see what happens here. Um, I don't know. It's a crapshoot. Getting on to some other topics here, because like everyone else, I listen to some of the other stuff. Um, we are bashing a lot of the witches. I will say this in defense of the whole witch idea. Not that I'm a big fan of. Let's just throw a lot of this out there. Um, One thing I have noticed, Dave Filoni has been trying to leave all of the things that George Lucas had done alone. Now, in the creation of the twins, because it's not, it leads us to believe that they created the twins from the Force, which I don't know if that's really how they did it or not. I think if they would have just said the twins were born and brought into this, it would have a lot less bad press going against it, and they would have just left it at that. I think that would have been a better way to do it. Leave a little less in the witches, just kind of mention it was a covenant of witches, a cult, or whatever you want to call it, and just kind of glance over that and get it more into the heart of what should be going on. Not, the third episode, we're still doing backstory. You only have 8 episodes. You really want to have a good rounded story. Let's figure this out. So some of that stuff probably should have been cut and gone from there. But I will say, uh, they're not messing with everything else that's been written. So think of it in that regards. We are leaving a lot of the regular canon alone. This is using something else. So if they want to mess with it and do whatever, yeah, I did kind of miss on, and I thought about it when I watched it. Somehow we have a town that is built primarily out of stone that catches fire and burns down. If they showed like wood support beams and stuff like that catching fire, yeah, maybe. But the stone itself catching fire doesn't really work. Trying to see if there's anything else I've kind of missed here, but that really is the heart and soul of the issues I have. Is there a possibility? Sure. The last trilogy that Star Wars did, it was a mess. There are things I think that could have been done retrospectively. If we were to have sat there and said that Luke couldn't have left the planet because he was already dead and he did everything he did as a Force ghost, that would explain a lot more. And I think that would have given even more credibility to Luke Skywalker then, because even as a Force ghost, that means that he did now more in training someone else and even projecting himself to another planet while his ghost was forced to stay there. That would have been really awesome in that regard. Um, but that's not what we got. Still, to say that he, for whatever reason, and again, it's this whole narrative of they feel so ashamed of themselves for things that they did, and the writing was really bad on. He saved his father. He brought his father back to the light side after his father had done so much wrong, and he felt the goodness in him and brought him back. He couldn't do that in his nephew. This is all something for a different time, whatever. But we're dragging Jedi down for no real reason. The Jedi had always been looked at as, and even in the novelization, the same way of, they may fumble from time to time, but we pick ourselves up, and everything that we do, we're trying to do for the greater good of everyone. So we try to understand this is what this species needs here on their planet, and it might work on their planet, but this doesn't work for someone else on their planet. And we're trying to be a neutral form, not a military army, and we're not trying to impose our rights and that on everyone, because every planet is its own sovereign planet and its own sovereign way of handling their culture. And it's fine on their planet. It may not work on someone else's planet, but it's fine on their planet. And they've always let that go. The only thing that they were good all across the board to say is slavery is a no-no, which is very true. It should be a no-no. It should be something that's left off to the past and talked about, and the evils of it having been done by so many different groups all across the galaxy. Um, but the way they're portraying the Jedi, they are a very broken shell of what they were always presented to us. So, with that being said, that's my take on this. We'll see how the next episode goes. We'll see how they kind of try to play all this off. We have 4 episodes left, so we'll see how this goes. With that, have a wonderful day. We'll see you in the next video.